Kill me, or be my husband, Apache widow pleads with rancher. The son of Red Mesa was not like the soft, yellow star Eli Mercer had grown up under on Earth. This one burned red and wide in the sky, casting long copper shadows across the plains and making the tall grass shimmer like a living ocean. Eli stood at the edge of his ranch fence, one hand resting on the smooth metal rail, watching his bioengineered herd move slowly across the land. The animals were gentle giants, shaped like a mix between cattle and something older, something from a forgotten world. Their thick hides glowed faintly in the sunlight, and their slow, steady breathing brought comfort to Eli. He liked mornings like this. Quiet, simple, honest. Out here, far from the crowded space stations and loud political worlds, life made sense. Feed the herd, fix the fences. Trade food with nearby settlements, sleep under the stars. Eli believed that if you kept things small, you could keep them good. A soft sound broke the stillness. Not a warning signal, not a ship engine. It was more like a voice carried by the wind. Eli frowned and turned toward the main gate of his ranch. At first, he saw nothing but dust and heat waves rising from the ground. Then he saw her. She stood just beyond the fence, tall and still, her shape strange and beautiful in the red light. Her skin shimmered like polished stone, shifting between deep blue and soft silver as the sun touched her. Long markings ran along her arms and face, glowing faintly like stars trapped under skin. She was leaning against the gate, as if standing had taken all the strength she had left. Eli's heart beat faster. Visitors were rare, and alien visitors even more so. Most species preferred space stations or cities. A ranch in the middle of a quiet world was not a place people came by accident. He walked toward her slowly, keeping his hands open and visible like he had learned during first contact training years ago. "Hey," he said, his voice calm and low. "You okay there?" Her head lifted. Her eyes were large and dark, reflecting the sky like glass. When she looked at him, something deep and heavy sat behind that gaze. Not fear, not anger, loss. "I have crossed 3 systems to find you," she said. Her voice was smooth but tired, like water flowing over stone. "Eli Mercer, rancher of Red Mesa." He stopped walking. "You know my name?" "Yes." She took a step forward, then stumbled. Eli rushed to the gate and opened it. Before she could fall, he caught her. She was lighter than she looked, warm to the touch and trembling. He guided her to a bench near the fence and helped her sit. "Let's start with your name," he said gently. She straightened her back, even while clearly exhausted. "I am Tikora of the Ashakai." Eli nodded. He had heard of the Ashakai, proud, ancient, known across the galaxy for their strong traditions and deep sense of honor. "What brings you all the way out here, Tikora?" She looked past him, toward the herd moving across the plains. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers pressed together like she was holding something invisible. "My bondmate is gone," she said. Eli didn't fully understand what that meant, but he understood the pain in her voice. "I'm sorry," he said. Her eyes returned to him. "His work tied our people to yours. His bond tied me to him. Now, without him, I stand between 2 worlds and belong to neither." Eli leaned back against the fence. "That sounds like something your leaders should help with. I'm just a guy who raises food." "You are more than that," Tikora said. He almost laughed. "Trust me, I really am not." She studied him like she was trying to see something hidden beneath his simple clothes and dust-covered boots. "In our culture," she said, "a bond is not only love, it is protection. It is place, it is survival." Eli felt a strange chill in the warm air. "Okay, I think I'm missing something important here." She took a slow breath. "If I return to my people without a bond, I will be cast out, not in anger, not in hate, but in silence. I will become a story that ends." Eli rubbed the back of his neck. "That doesn't sound fair. It is tradition." "Tradition doesn't make it right," he said without thinking. Tikora's eyes widened slightly. "You speak as if choice stands above law," she said. "Yeah," Eli replied. "Most humans do." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The herd lowed softly in the distance, and the wind moved through the grass like a whisper. Tikora finally broke the silence. "I was told that humans build bonds differently, that you choose them. That they are not given to you by birth or duty." "That's true," Eli said. "We choose who we stand with. Sometimes we mess it up. Sometimes we get it right." She looked down at her hands. "Then I have come to the right world." Eli frowned. "I still don't understand what this has to do with me." She met his eyes again, and this time her voice was steady even if her body was. "Our treaty with humanity says that when an Ashakai loses their bond while serving peace, a human may offer them a place, a name. A future, Eli stared at her. A place like a job, a home. A bond, she said softly. His mouth went dry. You're saying marriage. Not in your way, she said quickly. In ours, it means protection, shared path, and cultural belonging. It does not demand what your stories say it does. Eli stood up and began pacing. Dust kicked up under his boots. This is crazy, he muttered. I didn't sign any treaty. I didn't agree to any of this. You did not, she said, but your people did. Long before either of us stood here. He stopped and looked at her. She wasn't demanding. She wasn't threatening. She was asking. What happens if I say no? He asked. Ticora looked back toward the sky where a thin line of light marked a distant ship passing between stars. I return, she said, and I become nothing. Eli exhaled slowly. That's not a real choice. She tilted her head. You believe choice must be fair. Yeah, he said, I do. Another silence settled between them. Eli finally said, you can stay here for now, rest, eat. Figure things out. Ticora seemed surprised. You would offer shelter without a bond? Of course, he said, that's just being decent. Her glowing markings brightened slightly like embers touched by wind. I was told humans were strange, she said, but not this strange. He smiled a little. You haven't even seen the weird parts yet. He led her toward the ranch house, a simple building made of metal and stone with wide windows facing the plains. Inside, the air was cool, and the smell of cooked grain and herbs lingered from breakfast. He poured her a glass of water and handed her a bowl of warm food. She studied it carefully before tasting it. Her eyes widened. This was grown here? She asked. Yep, most of it, Eli said. The herd helps with the soil, everything feeds everything else. She nodded slowly. A closed circle, like a bond. Guess so, he replied. As she ate, Eli contacted the nearest human outpost and told them he had an shack, I guessed. The response came back quickly. Diplomats were on their way. That night, Ticora stood outside, looking at the stars. Eli joined her, both of them wrapped in thick blankets against the cool air. Your sky is very open, she said. Yeah, Eli said, makes you feel small, but in a good way. She was quiet for a long time. On my world, she said, the sky is hidden by tall crystal towers. We build upward, always upward, you build outward. Guess that says something about us, Eli said. She turned to him. It says you make space for others. He didn't know how to respond to that. In the distance, lights appeared on the horizon, ships descending. The galaxy is coming, Eli said. Ticora nodded. And it will watch what you choose. He sighed. I really miss when my biggest problem was a broken fence. She gave a soft sound that might have been laughter. As the ships drew closer, Eli realized something that made his chest feel heavy and warm at the same time. He didn't see Ticora as a treaty or a problem. He saw her as a person who had crossed the stars because she believed humans might care. And that belief felt like something he didn't want to break. The red sun dipped below the plains, and the first stars of the night shone through the dark. Somewhere between two worlds, a simple ranch became the center of something much bigger than land, law, or tradition. The morning light on Red Mesa came in slow and gentle, spreading across the plains like a soft hand waking the world. The red sun rose behind the distant hills, and its glow slipped through the wide windows of Eli Mercer's ranch house. Eli was already awake. He sat at the small kitchen table, holding a warm cup of tea, staring at nothing in particular. The night before had left his mind heavy. Ships had landed on the edge of his land. Diplomats, translators, and observers from both human and Ashakai worlds now filled the quiet space around his ranch. His simple life had become a place the galaxy wanted to watch. Ticora stepped into the room quietly. She moved with care like someone who did not want to disturb more than air. She had wrapped herself in one of Eli's old coats. It was too big for her, but it kept the morning chill away. You did not sleep, she said. Eli looked up and smiled faintly. You're not supposed to sneak up on people like that, she tilted her head. I am still learning your ways. He set another cup on the table and poured her tea. Sit, this stuff helps with thinking. She took the cup carefully and sat across from him. Outside, the low hum of engines and soft voices floated in from the temporary camp the visitors had built. Small lights blinked between tents and ships. The wide, open land no longer felt empty. Ticora looked toward the window. They came faster than I expected. Yeah, Eli said, news travels quick when treaties are involved. She wrapped both hands around the cup, watching the steam rise. On my world, moments like this happen in halls of stone and crystal, not kitchens. Welcome to human diplomacy, Eli replied. We do a lot of it over food. There was a knock at the door. Eli stood and opened it to find a woman in a dark uniform with a small symbol of the Human Alliance on her chest. Her hair was tied back and her expression was calm but serious. "Eli Mercer," she said. "I'm Envoy Mara Hayes. May we speak?" Eli stepped aside. "Come on in." She glanced at T. Cora and gave a polite nod. "Ambassador T. Cora." T. Cora returned the nod, her posture straight and formal. They all sat at the table. The small space suddenly felt much smaller. Myra placed a small device between them. It glowed softly, translating in real time. "Eli," she began, "I want to be clear, you are not in trouble, but you are now part of a very important moment." He sighed. "That's what I was afraid of." She smiled a little. "Most people are." She turned to T. Cora. "Your people have sent cultural leaders. They will arrive later today." T. Cora nodded. "I expected as much." Myra looked back at Eli. "You've been named as a possible bond anchor. That's not a role many humans know about." "I don't even know what it means," Eli said. "It means," Myra explained, "that under the old treaty you can offer T. Cora a formal place in human society, a name, a legal standing, and cultural protection." "That still sounds like a lot for a rancher," Eli muttered. Myra leaned forward. "It is, but it's also a chance to show something important, that humans don't just sign agreements, we stand by people." T. Cora looked between them. "On my world, standing by someone is the same as becoming them." Eli rubbed his face. "That's a lot of pressure," Myra nodded. "That's why we want you to take time. No one is asking for a decision today." T. Cora's eyes lowered. Eli noticed. "What happens if we take too long?" he asked. Myra hesitated. "Her people will see it as rejection." T. Cora spoke quietly. "Silence can be louder than refusal." Eli pushed back his chair and stood. "I need some air." He walked outside. The land stretched wide and open, just like it always had. But now, small groups of people stood talking in different languages. Some were human, some were not. Tall figures with glowing eyes, short ones with smooth, scaled skin, all of them looking at his home like it had become something special. Eli felt small. T. Cora followed him. She stood beside him, looking at the herd moving slowly in the distance. "They move together," she said. "But each one walks its own path." Eli smiled. "Yeah, that's kind of the point." She turned to him. "My people do not understand that. To them, the group is the path." He thought about that. "Maybe that's why you came all this way." Her markings glowed softly. "Maybe." Later that day, the Apache leaders arrived. Their ship was long and curved, like a piece of the sky made solid. When it landed, the air felt different, heavy with meaning. 3 figures stepped out, tall, calm. Their presence felt old, like they carried centuries in their steps. They greeted T. Cora first, touching their foreheads to hers in a quiet ritual. Then they turned to Eli. One of them spoke through a translator. "You are the human who stands at the turning point." Eli swallowed. "I'm just a rancher." The leader studied him. "The smallest places often hold the greatest doors." They sat together in the open field under the wide sky. Humans and Apache formed a circle. The leader spoke of tradition, of bonds that tied families, cities, and worlds together, of how T. Cora's mate had worked for peace between species, and how his passing left a space that could not remain empty. Eli listened. He didn't understand all the words, but he understood the meaning. T. Cora was not just a person to them, she was a bridge. When it was his turn to speak, Eli stood slowly. "I don't know your laws," he said. "I don't know your customs. I know land, I know food, I know what it means to take care of something so it can grow." He looked at T. Cora. "I don't want to be a symbol. I don't want to be a rule. I just want to be someone who doesn't walk away when another person needs a place to stand." The Apache leaders were silent. Finally, one of them said, "You speak like a bond without knowing its name." That night, a shared meal was held. Food from many worlds was placed on long tables under the stars. People sat together, awkward at first, then laughing, then talking. T. Cora watched children from different species chase small glowing insects through the grass. Eli watched her watch them. "You look lighter," he said. "I feel uncertain," she replied, "but in a good way." "Yeah," he said, "that's how most good things start." Later, as the crowd thinned, T. Cora and Eli stood alone again. "My people believe bonds must be tested," she said. "Not with pain, with understanding." He raised an eyebrow. "That sounds better than most tests." She smiled softly. "They wish to see if you will walk my world as I walk yours." Eli looked up at the stars. "Guess I've always wanted to travel." Her markings glowed brighter. Somewhere far above, ships moved between worlds. But on Red Mesa, under a simple sky, two people from different stars stood at the edge of something new. Not because a treaty demanded it, but because they chose to keep walking forward instead of turning away. The wind moved through the grass, carrying the sound of quiet hope across the land. The sky above Red Mesa changed color as the day moved forward, shifting from soft red to pale gold, and then to a gentle blue that looked almost like Earth's old skies. The wind carried the smell of grass and distant rain from the far hills. The ranch felt alive in a new way, not just with animals and land, but with voices from many worlds. Eli stood near the main fence, watching a small group of visitors walk carefully through the field. They pointed at the herd, speaking in quiet tones, their translators glowing as they shared thoughts about soil, food, and living systems. He never thought anyone would care so much about his work. To him, it was just life. Cora stood a few steps away, speaking with one of the Shakai leaders. Her posture was calm, but Eli could tell she was carrying something heavy inside. Her markings glowed softly, like they were responding to her thoughts. When she finished, she walked over to him. "They want us to begin the walk," she said. Eli raised an eyebrow. "The walk?" "Yes," she replied. "A shared path. My people believe understanding comes from seeing how another lives, not just hearing about it." He nodded slowly. "So what does that mean for us?" "It means," she said, "you will come with me to our ship, you will see how we live, and later I will stay here with you and live your way." Eli looked at his ranch, his home, the open land that had always been his world. Then he looked at Cora. "Guess it's only fair," he said. The Shakai ship waited at the edge of the plains, its surface smooth and shining like calm water frozen in place. As they walked toward it, Eli felt his heart beat a little faster. He had traveled before, but never like this. Never as part of something that felt so important. Inside the ship, the air was cool and clean. Soft light flowed from the walls instead of lamps. The floor felt warm under his boots, like it was alive in some quiet way. Cora watched him closely. "You look like a child seeing snow for the first time," she said. He smiled. "I kind of feel like one." They walked through wide halls where a Shakai moved with smooth, careful steps. Some stopped to look at Eli, not with fear, not with judgment, with curiosity. They entered a large room with a clear ceiling. Above them, stars drifted past, slow and peaceful. "This is where we gather," Cora said. "We speak, we remember, and we decide." Eli took off his hat without thinking. "It's beautiful," she nodded. "So is your land." They sat together on low seats near the center of the room. An elder approached, carrying a small object made of glowing crystal. "This holds stories," the elder said, "of bonds that shaped our people." The crystal lit up and images formed in the air. Eli saw scenes of a Shakai standing beside other species, building cities, planting fields, sharing knowledge. "These bonds were not all born from choice," the elder said. "Some were born from need, some from fear." The image changed to show a bond breaking. Two figures walking away from each other, leaving behind a world that slowly grew dark. Cora's markings dimmed. The elder looked at Eli. "You come from a people who choose, we come from a people who endure. We wish to learn if these paths can become one." Eli thought about his ranch. About broken fences he fixed not because someone told him to, but because the animals needed safety. About neighbors he helped because it felt right. "I don't know if I have the right answers," he said, "but I know I don't like seeing anyone left behind." The elder nodded slowly. "That may be enough." Later they returned to the ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in deep orange and purple. The visitors had grown in number. More ships had arrived. Red Mesa was becoming a small, living center of the galaxy. Cora stood beside Eli as they watched people share food again, this time more freely, more naturally. The fear and formality of the first day had faded into something warmer. "I feel different here," Cora said. "Lighter. Like I am allowed to be more than what I was made to be." Eli smiled. "Yeah, that's kind of our thing." The next day, it was Cora's turn to walk Eli's world. He showed her how to check the soil, how to guide the herd without force, how to fix a fence with simple tools and patience. She tried everything, even when her hands weren't made for wires and metal. She laughed when she slipped in the dirt. The sound surprised both of them. "I do not think my people would approve of this," she said, brushing dust from her coat. Eli laughed too. "They don't have to live here." They sat on a small hill, watching the herd move across the plains. "Your world feels open," she said. "Not just the land, the way you think." He shrugged. "We mess up a lot, but we try to leave room to fix things." She looked at him. That is a powerful thing to try. As days passed, more visitors arrived. Scholars, leaders, and travelers who had heard about what was happening on Red Mesa. Some came out of hope, some out of doubt. Questions filled the air. Was this bond real? Was it just a symbol? Would it change anything? Eli and Ticora answered as best they could, not with speeches, not with rules, with actions. They worked together, ate together, walked together. They showed that whatever this bond was becoming, it was built on respect, not control. One evening, a group of young visitors from different species sat near a fire, listening as Eli told stories about Earth, about oceans and mountains and cities that touched the clouds. Ticora listened too. You come from a world full of many voices, she said. Yeah, Eli replied. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's messy, but it's alive. She nodded. I think I like alive. Later that night, she stood alone near the fence, looking at the stars. Eli joined her. My people sent a message, she said. They are watching closely, he sighed. So is mine. She turned to him. Are you afraid? He thought for a moment. Yeah, but I'm more afraid of doing nothing. Her markings glowed brighter. The next day, a public gathering was called. Humans and Apache stood together under the open sky. A platform was set in the field, simple and plain. An Apache leader spoke first, talking about tradition, duty, and survival. Then a human envoy spoke about choice, freedom, and shared future. Finally, Ticora stepped forward. She took a deep breath. I was born into a path, she said. One that told me who I must be and where I must stand. I honored it. I believed in it. She looked at Eli. Then I came here, and I saw a way where bonds are not chains but bridges. The crowd was silent. I do not reject my people, she continued. I carry them with me, but I choose to walk forward with humanity, not because I must, but because I want to. Eli felt his chest tighten. The Apache leaders whispered among themselves. At last, one of them spoke. Choice is a seed. If it grows, it will change the forest. Ticora turned to Eli. Will you walk with me even if the path is unclear? He didn't hesitate. Yeah, he said. I will. The sun dipped low and the sky filled with stars. On Red Mesa, under an open universe, something quiet but powerful took root. Not a treaty, not a rule. A choice made in simple words, carrying the weight of many worlds. The days after Ticora's public words felt different on Red Mesa. The air itself seemed to carry a quiet tension, like the land was waiting to see what would happen next. Visitors still came, but now they spoke in softer voices. They watched Eli and Ticora not as symbols, but as people standing in the middle of something fragile and important. Eli noticed it in small ways. When he walked through the camp, people stepped aside, not out of fear, but out of respect. When Ticora passed, some Apache bowed their heads, while others looked away, unsure how to respond to her choice. Ticora felt the weight of it more deeply. She stood one morning at the edge of the plains, staring at the distant hills. Her markings glowed faintly, but not with their usual steady light. They flickered, like a fire that did not know which way the wind would blow. Eli approached quietly, carrying 2 cups of warm drink. You look like you're trying to see through the land, he said. She took the cup from him, her fingers brushing his. I am trying to see my future, she replied, and I see many paths. Yeah, Eli said. That's kind of the problem with choice. It opens more doors than it closes. She gave a small smile. On my world, doors are chosen for you. They stood in silence, watching the herd move across the grass. Later that day, a message arrived from the Apache homeworld. The leaders gathered inside the largest tent on the ranch. The air inside felt heavy with meaning. Ticora stood in the center. Eli sat near the edge, feeling out of place but unwilling to leave her alone. The image of the Apache council appeared in the air. Tall figures, ancient and calm, their markings bright with authority. Ticora of the Apache, one of them said. You stand between what was and what may be. She lowered her head slightly. I do. You have chosen a path outside our law, the council continued. This path cannot be walked without cost. Eli's hands tightened on his knees. Ticora lifted her head. I understand. Another voice spoke. Your bondmate gave his life to build peace. You now stand where he stood. Ticora's markings dimmed for a moment, then steadied. I honor his path, she said, but I do not wish to live only in his shadow. The council was silent. Finally, one of them spoke again. There is an old rule, rarely used, almost forgotten. A bond may be reshaped if it is formed by 2 wills instead of 1 need. Murmurs moved through the room. Eli leaned forward. The council continued. If you and the human choose each other freely, not as duty but as shared future, then your place among us will not be lost. It will be changed. Ticora turned to Eli. Her eyes searched his face not for an answer but for truth. After the message ended, the tent felt very quiet. Eli stood slowly. I don't know your rules, he said. I don't know your history, but I know this. He looked at Ticora. I'm not here because a treaty says I should be. I'm here because I don't want you to face this alone. Ticora's markings glowed brighter than they ever had. That evening the ranch became a place of reflection. Fires were lit. People from many worlds sat together in small circles, sharing stories about where they came from and why they left. Ticora sat with a group of young Ashakai. They asked her what it felt like to choose. It feels like standing on the edge of the sky, she told them. Scary. Beautiful, free. Eli sat nearby with human settlers and travelers, talking about how he never planned to be part of something like this. I just wanted to grow food, he said, making them laugh. Later, Ticora and Eli walked along the fence line. The stars above them were bright and countless. My people say I am becoming something new, Ticora said. Not fully Ashakai, not fully human. Sounds like the best of both, Eli replied. She looked at him. Are you afraid of what this might become? He thought about it. Yeah. But I think some things are worth being afraid for. The next day brought another challenge. A group of visitors from a distant system arrived. They were not there to celebrate or learn. They were there to question. They gathered in front of the ranch, their leader speaking loudly so all could hear. You are changing the balance, the leader said. If bonds become choices, then old alliances will weaken, traditions will fall. Ticora stepped forward. Traditions are meant to guide, not cage. The leader turned to Eli. And you, human, do you understand what you are helping to break? Eli took a breath. I'm not trying to break anything, I'm trying to build something. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The leader shook their head. You are planting a seed of uncertainty. Eli looked at the ground for a moment, then he looked up. Maybe, he said, but uncertainty is how we grow. The visitors left, unconvinced but thoughtful. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch, staring at the stars. Ticora joined him, sitting close but not touching. I do not want to be the reason your world becomes divided, she said. Eli shook his head. You're not. This was already here. You just help people see it. She was quiet for a long time. My bondmate once told me that peace is not something you sign, she said. It is something you wake up and choose every day. Eli smiled. Sounds like a smart person, she smiled back a little sadly. He was. The next morning, a ceremony was prepared. Not a wedding, not a treaty, something in between. A simple platform was built from ranch wood and Ashakai crystal. It stood in the open field under the wide sky. People gathered from every group that had come to Red Mesa. Ticora stood on one side, Eli stood on the other, and a Ashakai elder spoke first. This is not a binding of duty, this is a joining of paths. A human envoy spoke next. This is not a contract, this is a promise made by choice. They turned to Ticora. Do you choose to walk this path with this human, not as shelter, but as partner? Ticora took a deep breath. I do. They turned to Eli. Do you choose to walk this path with this Ashakai, not as symbol, but as person? Eli swallowed. I do. They stepped forward together. There was no exchange of rings, no formal words, just a shared touch of hands. The crowd was silent, then softly, quietly, voices rose, not cheers, not applause, approval. Later, as the gathering faded, Ticora and Eli stood alone again, the land stretching wide and open around them. I feel different, Ticora said, like I have stepped into a new story. Eli nodded. Me too. Above them, ships moved between stars, carrying news of what had happened on a small ranch on a quiet world. News that bonds could be chosen. News that tradition could change without breaking. On Red Mesa, the wind moved through the grass, carrying that message outward, far beyond the plains, into a galaxy that was starting to listen. The morning after the ceremony felt quieter than all the days before it. The ranch on Red Mesa looked the same as it always had. The grass still moved with the wind. The herd still walked slow and steady across the plains. The red sun still climbed into the sky like it did not care about bonds, choices, or the galaxy watching below. But Eli and Ticora felt that something had changed. They stood on the porch of the ranch house, side by side, holding warm cups and watching the day begin. It feels strange, Eli said. After all that, it's just another morning. Ticora looked at the land. On my world, after great moments, there are always great celebrations. Parades, songs, stories told again and again, he smiled. We usually just get back to work, she considered that. I think I like this way. The visitors did not leave right away. In fact, more arrived. Ships landed in careful lines along the plains. Travelers, leaders, families, and wanderers stepped out, not with questions this time, but with hope. They had heard what happened on Red Mesa. They had heard about a place where different worlds had stood together without being forced. They wanted to see it for themselves. Eli walked through the growing camp, shaking hands, nodding, and sometimes just listening. He had never been much for speeches. He preferred quiet work and simple words. But now people asked him about the ranch, about T-Cora, about what it meant to choose a bond instead of follow one. I don't have a big answer, he told them. I just know it felt right to not turn away. T-Cora walked among the Apache visitors. Some looked at her with pride. Some with confusion, some with fear of what her choice might mean for their own lives. A young Apache approached her one afternoon. If I choose my own path, the young one asked, will I lose my people? T-Cora knelt so they were eye to eye. You may lose the version of them you expected, she said gently, but you may find a new one that walks with you. The young Apache thought about that and nodded slowly. Days turned into weeks. The ranch began to change. Small buildings were built near the fields. Simple shelters at first, then stronger ones. Humans and aliens worked together, learning each other's ways. Tools were shared. Food was grown. New plants from distant worlds were tested in the soil. Red Mesa was no longer just a ranch. It was becoming a home. Eli sometimes stood on a hill at night, looking at the lights spreading across the plains. He never planned for this, never wanted to be part of history. I just wanted quiet, he said one evening. T-Cora stood beside him. And now, he thought for a moment. Now I want this to stay good, she smiled. That is a bigger dream. The Human Alliance sent messages asking what Red Mesa was becoming. The Apache Council sent observers to study the growing community. Some called it risky, some called it dangerous, some called it beautiful. One message stood out to Eli. It came from a distant world that had long struggled with conflict between its many species. We heard about a place where people chose to stand together, the message said. May we send some of our own? Eli read it twice. T-Cora watched him. The seed is growing, he nodded. Guess we better make sure it has good ground. A council was formed, not of leaders, but of helpers, farmers, builders, teachers, healers, people from many worlds who cared about keeping the place kind and fair. T-Cora joined them. So did Eli, even though he still felt strange sitting in a circle talking about the future of a world. They made simple rules. Everyone had a voice. Everyone helped. No one was forced to stay. It sounds small, one visitor said. That's the point, Eli replied. Big things start small. One evening, a group of children from different species played near the fence, chasing each other through the tall grass. Their laughter carried across the land. T-Cora watched them for a long time. This is what my bondmate wanted, she said softly. A future where no one stands alone. Eli put a hand on the fence. Looks like he did pretty good, she nodded. So did you? Not everyone approved of what Red Mesa was becoming. Some worlds worried that their people would leave, that old traditions would fade. That choices would bring change they could not control. A group of envoys arrived to speak with Eli and T-Cora. You are creating a place that pulls people away from their homes, one said. Eli shook his head. We're not pulling anyone, they're walking here. T-Cora added, and some will walk back, that is part of choosing. The envoys left with more questions than answers. That night, Eli and T-Cora sat on the porch again, watching the stars. Do you ever miss your old life? T-Cora asked. He thought about quiet mornings, empty plains, and a world that only asked him to care for animals and land. Sometimes, he said, but I don't regret this. She looked at him. Neither do I. A message arrived from the Apache homeworld. The council had made a decision. They would recognize Red Mesa as a new kind of place. Not fully Apache, not fully human, a shared world. T-Cora read the message slowly, her markings glowing brighter with every word. They are calling it a bridge world, she said. Eli smiled. I kind of like that. Soon after, the Human Alliance did the same. They sent supplies, teachers, doctors, people who wanted to help build something new instead of protect something old. Red Mesa grew. Paths became roads, shelters became homes. Fields became farms that fed not just the ranch, but ships passing through and stations far away. The galaxy began to speak of the place in stories, a world where no one asked what you were before they asked who you wanted to be. One night, a traveler arrived alone. tired, lost. Eli found them at the gate just like he found Ticora so long ago. "Can I stay?" the traveler asked. Eli opened the gate. "Yeah, you can." Ticora watched from the porch, her eyes soft. Later, she joined Eli. "Do you ever think about how it started?" she asked. He nodded. "You standing at my fence," she smiled. "I was so afraid." He laughed gently. "I was too." They stood in comfortable silence. Years passed. Red Mesa was no longer a small point on star maps. It had a name people recognized, the Bond World. Not because of one bond, but because of many. People came, people stayed, people left and carried the idea with them. Ticora became a speaker for both her people and humanity, not in halls of crystal or metal, but in fields, kitchens, and open skies. Eli kept working the land. When people asked him how it felt to help change the galaxy, he always gave the same answer. "I just didn't close a gate." One evening, long after the sun had set, Eli and Ticora sat on the same hill where they once watched the first ships arrive. The lights of the world below them glowed like stars on the ground. "Do you think this will last?" Ticora asked. Eli looked at the land, the people, and the sky full of moving lights. "I don't know," he said, "but I think it's worth trying to keep it." She leaned her shoulder lightly against his. The wind moved through the grass, just like it did on the first day they met. Somewhere far away, new worlds listened to stories about a simple ranch where a woman crossed the stars and a man chose not to turn away. And in those stories, people did not hear about power or laws or great battles. They heard about a place where someone said, "You can stay."